What is up, everybody? Purple and Gold podcast for Tuesday, March 24th. A jam-packed episode. LSU takes on Louisiana Tech tonight, 6:30 Central Time at Alex Box Stadium. The Lane Kiffin on-field era officially begins today as LSU football opens spring practice. And we've got an update on the behind-the-scenes machinations within LSU's athletic department that may all result in Will Wade being brought back as LSU's basketball coach. And now we know, we'll start with the LSU women's basketball team. We have a day and a time for their Sweet 16 matchup against Duke. They will play Friday night at 9 Central Time on ESPN in the Sweet 16. Get you a Red Bull, get you an espresso, get you whatever your beverage of choice is that will keep you up late. LSU baseball will play Friday night at 6:30, and that'll roll right into late night women's basketball. We will dive into LSU and Duke later in the week. So for tonight's game, LSU and Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech, a little preview here. They come in 15-10. They're really struggling on offense. They've struggled in midweek games. They've been held down by a lot of teams. They were swept in two midweek games by Arkansas State. They were beaten by McNeese. Southern Miss swept them on the weekend a couple of weeks ago. They did have a nice weekend this weekend against New Mexico State. They really only have two impact players on offense. It'll be very important for LSU to stay away from those guys and try to get this win tonight and get back on the winning side of things after dropping the last two games on the weekend against Oklahoma. Who would be available to pitch tonight for LSU? Well, let's start with who I think you won't see. You obviously won't see Kason Evans, William Schmidt. I don't think you'll see Gavin Guidry after throwing 70 pitches on Saturday, and I don't think you'll see Devin Sheeran after throwing 40 pitches on Saturday, unless it was maybe like a one-run game in the ninth inning and he was in a true save situation. So where does that leave you? Well, Reagan Ricken has started a couple of times in the midweek. It hasn't gone great. His best outing was his first outing, that Wednesday game against Nichols, where he threw, I think it was 3 1/3 hitless, scoreless innings. He would be a candidate to start this game, see if he could give you an inning or two. I think Marcos Paz will pitch in this game tonight. I think Jaden Newt will pitch in this game tonight. I think Ethan Plog will pitch in this game tonight. Santiago Garcia can pitch in this game tonight. Grant Fontenot could pitch tonight. And depending on the score, you might even, see some lower level guys, DJ Primo, Connor Benj, if LSU was able to somehow open up the score and allow for some other guys to pitch. But my guess is Ricken or Paz would start, followed probably by each other or by Jaden Newt. I think ideally you'd like to get maybe 5 innings or maybe even 6 innings, maybe 5 and some change from those three guys, and then that would open them up to be available again on Sunday. You will notice I did not say Zach Cowan. I did not say Zach Cowan because I believe Zach Cowan is going to move into LSU's rotation and be LSU's Sunday starter. Now, no one has said that on LSU's side. Jay Johnson has not said that. His last few outings have been encouraging. He has starting experience at Wofford. He started a game for LSU against Arkansas in the College World Series last year. That does not mean that they can't try to start someone else on a Sunday, i.e. Jaden Newt, i.e. Gavin Guidry if they didn't need him the first 2 days of a series, and then piggyback with Zach Cowan. My guess is Zach Cowan would be available tonight but for no more than an inning if he was going to pitch. And again, I think you would count on LSU's offense to hopefully break out a little bit tonight and extend the score, hopefully, to where maybe LSU would not need to use Sheeran or Cowan. So let's talk about LSU's offense here. Who might we see in the lineup tonight? Well, Stanfield, Curiel, and Brown are going to play the outfield, and Cerna and Aaron Beatty are going to catch and DH. Those things I feel pretty comfortable with at this point. I know Cerna played first on Saturday. I guess that's a possibility tonight, but I'm going to go back to Zach York at first base tonight. I think this is a spot to get him back in the game and see if he can't shake out of his funk. And you know Stephen Milam is going to be at shortstop. So in this scenario, you've got second base and third base open. I don't think John Pearson has done anything to quote-unquote lose his job at third base. Not that he has the job, but he got all of the starts there over the weekend, so I'm going to pencil him in back at third base. And second base is, your guess is as good as mine. Tanner Reeves hasn't hit a lick. Seth Dardar's in a funk, down to 220. Trent Carraway's hitting 254. He's maybe your best defender there. Jack Ruckert has made 3 errors as a defensive replacement. Braden Simpson made 3 errors. Braden Simpson hasn't played hardly at all since Chris Stanfield came back. Do you give Braden Simpson a shot tonight? Do you give Trent Carraway the start and try to roll out some sort of a consistent lineup and then make changes based on matchups left-right? Is Ethan Kloss, the freshman shortstop, is he your new late game defensive replacement at second base if you feel you need one? All of those things are TBD. I would give Braden Simpson a shot tonight. I would start John Pearson at third base. I would start Zach York at first base, Aaron Beatty at catcher, Cerner at DH. On to spring football. So spring football opens up today at LSU, and we know Sam Levitt will not do the team drills. We know he'll do some individual stuff coming off his Liz Frank injury. I think you're looking at position battles on the offensive line. You're looking at position battles at wide receiver. I think you want to see how some of the defensive line stuff shakes out. Now, granted, not every member of LSU's freshman class is an early enrollee. So, for example, Lamar Brown will not participate in spring practice, but Richard Anderson, the 5-star defensive tackle from Edna Carr, will. We'll get our first look at all of the transfers. We'll get our first look at Husan Longstreet and Landon Clark at quarterback. And we'll have finally some media availability at times from Lane Kiffin. So this is the beginning of the actual on-field part of this. We've talked a lot about Lane Kiffin and his staff. We've talked a lot about, their ability to recruit out of the transfer portal, the $40 million roster, all of the players who they convinced to return, Harlem Berry, Braylon Moore, Trey Green, Whit Weeks, PJ Woodland, DJ Pickett, and then, of course, adding, so many impact transfers, including Jordan Seaton, Sam Levitt, Longstreet, Jace Brown at wide receiver, Winnie Watkins at wide receiver. You know the names. Ty Benefield at safety, Stephylan Green on the defensive line, Jordan Ross, and Prince Will Uman Mielen on the edge. It's going to be good to see guys actually get out on the field and get to work as LSU prepares for a Labor Day weekend home opener against Clemson, which will certainly be the talk of the summer around these parts. So let's finish up today with the latest on LSU's men's basketball coaching situation. So if you haven't listened every day, basically Matt McMahon has not been told that he will return, and he has not been fired yet. Him and his coaching staff find themselves in a state of limbo. We know about Will Wade's relationship with Dr. Wade Roos, who was the president at McNeese, who's now the president at LSU. We know about Will Wade's relationship with Lee Mallett, who's now the chairman of the LSU Board of Supervisors. We know about Will Wade's relationship with John Koderos, who's a new member now of the LSU Board of Supervisors, who was a benefactor at McNeese. And we know about Will Wade's buyout at NC State. It's $5 million, but it does go down to $3 million after April 1st. Now, here is the new bit of information. There are multiple reports that LSU is targeting McNeese State Athletic Director Heath Schroyer to become their associate athletic director and basically take the job that Verge Osbury had before Verge was promoted to the full-on athletic director. Why is this important to Will Wade? Well, it's important to the Will Wade situation because obviously Heath Schroyer hired Will Wade along with Dr. Roos at McNeese, and this would be another bullet in the chamber of a Will Wade guy in LSU's athletic department. But here's where it gets real interesting. You say to yourself, why would Heath Schroyer leave McNeese, where he's the full-on athletic director, to be the associate athletic director at LSU? Well, obviously, bigger school, bigger budget, bigger athletic department, the big time. But the thought process is he will be installed as sort of overseeing basketball, and Will Wade would report directly to him. This would sort of circumnavigate the Verge Osbury, Scott Woodward, those were the guys that fired Will Wade. Not that Verge Osbury is necessarily against rehiring Will Wade. I've not heard that. Not that Verge Osbury is necessarily a guy who Will Wade would not work for. I've not heard that either. But I do think Will Wade would probably have some pause if his direct report was Verge Osbury. Now look, Will Wade's got the support of the governor, he's got the support of the president, he's got the support of the Board of Supervisors. He doesn't need Heath Schroyer in order to take this job, but I think that scenario playing out would be the cherry on top. I said on this program, I guess it was a week or so ago, maybe 5 or 6 days ago when McNeese lost, I thought there was maybe a 30 or a 35% chance that Will Wade was going to be LSU's next head basketball coach. The fact that we have heard nothing since since NC State lost last Tuesday night, we've had no confirmation that Matt McMahon will be back, and the Heath Schroyer stuff picked up steam over the weekend. I am going to say this now, I'll call my shot. I think if Heath Schroyer is hired at LSU, Will Wade will be LSU's next men's basketball coach. I think that's the path that LSU is trying to finalize right now. Obviously, April 1st is next Tuesday, so you still have some time for this to play out. My guess is McNeese will do everything they can to try to keep Schroyer. My hunch is that we'll have some kind of an announcement on this maybe later in the week, Thursday, Friday, either him staying at McNeese or him coming to LSU, and then that would sort of get you through a weekend cycle, right, of the NCAA tournament. They wouldn't step on those toes. And my guess is on Monday and Tuesday next week, you'll start to hear the leaks and the reports that Will Wade would be expected to be LSU's next men's basketball coach. Now look, not saying he's going to be the coach. This is a lot of piecing things together. But the one thing you can say is everybody who's in LSU's administration right now and everybody that LSU is targeting to potentially be in their athletic administration all seem to be aligned and all seem to be focused solely on Will Wade as LSU's next men's basketball coach. If it didn't happen this year, the question was asked, could it happen next year? And the answer is a simple yes. You could try all of this again next year. You could try to hire Heath Schroyer again next year. Will Wade's buyout goes down after his second year at NC State. Matt McMahon's buyout goes down after another year at LSU. The question is, though, does Will Wade become slightly more entrenched with another year at NC State, and does it make it slightly more difficult for him to make this move? I can't answer those questions, right? I can't even answer the question of, does Will Wade want to come back to LSU? I think he does, and I think LSU believes that he does, and that's why they're sort of making some of the moves they're making, but I can't answer that with 100% certainty. We'll be here to cover it as it unfolds. We'll be here to talk about spring practice. We'll be here tomorrow to recap LSU and Louisiana Tech. As always, be good to one another, and always, 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 go Tigers.